There's an interesting legend of an Imperial officer known as Harkov. Many stories involving the Imperial military's officer class are tales of die-hard dedication or switching allegiances and joining the Rebel Alliance. Harkov's case is more unique. He was a simpler man. He stopped caring about political events and focused on one of the most corrupting things for a human: money. This is the Imperial Remnant. Stand by for briefing. Early in his career in the Imperial Navy, Harkov was a typical commanding officer. He was put in charge of the Imperial-class Star Destroyer Protector. Harkov followed orders and carried out his duties with a precise and professional demeanor. The highlight of his career was his involvement in the TIE Avenger program. When that program was a success, the Protector and Harkov were among the first to get a squadron of the advanced starfighters. 3 years after the Battle of Yavin, Harkov became disillusioned with his career. Perhaps he felt looked over, underappreciated, or just thought that he could get away with whatever he wanted to do. He started moonlighting as an arms dealer. He would sell Imperial weaponry and military-grade gear to any group who could pay for it. Political allegiances did not matter. He even went as far as to contact the Rebel Alliance and offer his services, along with all the ships under his command, if they would pay him the right price to make it worth betraying the Empire. His only allegiance at this point was to credits. Admiral Morden, also of the Imperial Navy, was a diligent officer in his own right. He heard some strange rumbling through Imperial transmissions amongst the fleet. These suspicions led him to monitor more transmissions with increasing frequency. He was sure he was uncovering some corruption, potentially even treason. Unfortunately, he didn't have any concrete evidence as to who was behind it all, but he did suspect fellow high-ranking Imperial officers would be involved. Morden had a protege, a young and very skilled pilot called Maarek Stele. Morden filled Stele in on his suspicions, knowing that the younger man was not connected enough for this to get out, and trusted the young man wasn't in on it. Morden was correct in his faith in Stele, as well as his deduction that other officers were in on the corruption. Unfortunately, he was not as careful as he thought, and word made it back to Harkov that Morden was closing in on him. Morden wasn't dumb. He assumed his life would be in danger at some point while investigating this, no matter how careful he thought he was being. Harkov knew that he was playing a dangerous game. If word of the corruption, let alone the defection, were to get out, the Emperor and his right-hand man, the terrifying Darth Vader, would act swiftly and brutally. Harkov ordered Morden killed, and specified that the death not look like an assassination. Morden didn't alter his routine. It's not clear if he thought he had more time, or simply accepted his fate, but he wasn't hard to find when the assassins came to get him. The one thing he did do differently was he had his closest confidant and protege, Stele, transferred to a remote outpost in the Outer Rim designated D-34. Rumors of Morden's death spread among the enlisted like wildfire before any official announcements were made. The official statement was that he died of natural causes, but no one seemed to buy that. Military investigators, I would guess from the Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB, began conducting a deeper investigation. They questioned many who served with Morden, including Stele. Stele didn't know the full story, at least not at first. He received a strange transmission, supposedly from his mother. The message had many cryptic things in it, so Stele did not think his mom was the one to send it. Stele used Morden's clearance credentials to decode the message. Once decrypted, a final message from Morden explaining everything was revealed. Unfortunately, Stele was now in a similar position to Morden before his death. He knew something was wrong. He knew there was corruption and treason all around him, but he didn't have enough evidence or even a name to submit to the ISB. On Morden's orders, Stele managed to get in touch with the Secret Order of the Emperor, also known as the Prophets of the Dark Side. He wanted to give them whatever information he did have before his fate would follow Morden's. This dark side cult was founded a long time ago by Darth Millennial, and man did that Sith name age poorly. They operated on Dromund Kaas, an Outer Rim planet that once served as the home of the reconstituted Sith Empire. The prophets were all men. They wore black robes and had black hair and beards. I don't know if a very strong, powerful Force adept came in that was blonde would just be kicked out, but that's the description I got. They trained in the dark side and used their abilities to be seers. They saw their connection to the Force as a way to see all possible outcomes for any future events. That seems like a pretty incredible power, but it's not as good as they would make you think. They were able to see a lot of possible outcomes for future events, including the destruction of both Death Stars. But to keep their track record, they would do whatever they had to do to ensure the outcome that they prophesied would be the correct one. They were still very powerful, but not exactly in the way that they claimed. The Order told Stele to find more proof of corruption and get them a name. Imperial Command would eventually transfer Stele onto the Protector and under the command of Harkov. They had no idea of the connection between these two men who didn't even know they were connected themselves. This gave Stele the opportunity he needed to continue his mentor's work. While this investigation was continuing behind his back, Harkov was still carrying out his duties. He was assigned to stop a civil war in the Sepin system. The commanding officers who gave him this directive had no idea Harkov was actually stoking the fires of war and selling weapons to both sides. He couldn't openly defy orders, so he brought his ships to the system to squash the conflict. Stele, on orders from the Secret Order, inspected some of the local ships belonging to one of the factions in this conflict. He found Imperial weaponry, solidifying the corruption evidence. After a skirmish between the Damok and the Republis, the two factions in the smaller civil war, Stele had an opportunity to search an installation belonging to the side opposite the one whose ships he found illegal weapons on. Here, he found more illegally sold weapons. The weapons were recovered and brought back to the Protector. Harkov, knowing Stele was getting very close, pretended that he was angry over a simple chain of command issue and told Stele not to exceed his combat mandate again. The Civil War turned uglier. Both sides unified in an attempt to repel the Imperial presence. Meanwhile, Stele found discrepancies in the Protector's inventory that showed the illegal weapon sales came from the very ship's own stocks. Things began to unravel even quicker for Harkov. The Secret Order warned Stele of an incoming ship, not related to the escalating conflict. When Stele intercepted the ship, he found a high-ranking member of the Rebel Alliance was on board and was supposed to rendezvous with someone in this same sector. No one could believe such a thing was a coincidence. The Order sent all the information to Darth Vader, naming Harkov the traitor. The might of the Empire, even with Harkov distracted, beat both sides of the Sepin Civil War into submission. Harkov had meetings with his closest advisors. He exposed his plan of defection and worried it wouldn't happen in time. Forfeiting his payday was bad enough, but at this point, if he did not defect, he would be forfeiting his life. Harkov figured out that Stele was behind all of the information leaks and ordered the man killed, saying it should look like an accident during a training exercise. The Secret Order was one step ahead and rescued Stele before this latest assassination could be carried out. Harkov was officially desperate. He was exposed, wide open. The spy had fled and the Alliance changed the terms of their agreement with them. They refused to pay anything, knowing he was desperate to defect at this point. He jumped to Rebel space to hide from the Empire. He was now solely reliant on the Alliance giving him resources to survive. Darth Vader was dispatched to find, interrogate, and execute Harkov. The Empire worked methodically to cut off Harkov's supplies, weaken his forces, and capture the former Admiral alive. He was dragged in front of Darth Vader to answer for his crimes against the Empire. Harkov tried to be defiant. He wouldn't answer anything the Dark Lord asked of him. Vader, impatient and not really caring about the information, used the Force to lift the man into the air and crush him like a bug. For a fun little bit of in-universe trivia, the Protector was featured in a holo serial called The Voyages of the VSD Protector. It's safe to assume that none of the treason or black market dealings would be part of the serial, since it was made during the reign of the Empire and was probably more of a propaganda piece than anything entertaining. The legend I just told was created for the 1994 game Star Wars TIE Fighter. In the game, you play as Maarek, Stele, and Harkov is a major part of the first half of the game's story. The story thread of the Sepin Civil War was showing the Empire at its best, actually enacting law and order in the galaxy they were dominating. That makes this the rare story where the Empire are the good guys, from a certain point of view, and Harkov being the villain as his greed and corruption led to death and destruction. The story was really fleshed out in TIE Fighter, the official strategy guide. This video is made at the request of a viewer, which is so cool, so anyone watching this, if there's something you want me to deep dive on, you want a video about, drop it in the comments and I will absolutely do it. Check out this transmission next for more Star Wars lore.